All right, buckle up because we're diving headfirst into a statement that dropped like a bombshell. President Trump declaring the U.S. will run Venezuela until a proper transition. Now, that's a bold claim, isn't it? It sounds like something straight out of a political thriller, but it raises so many questions. What does run even mean? And what exactly constitutes a proper transition in a country as complex and volatile as Venezuela? This isn't just about leadership, it's about sovereignty, international law, and the very delicate balance of power in a region already ripe with tension. We're going to unpack this because when a superpower talks about running another nation, the implications are massive, and the reality is often far messier than the soundbite. Let's get into it.
And with Maduro's ouster, Venezuela's Supreme Court ordered that Vice President Delcy Rodríguez assume the role of acting president of the country. This comes after President Trump said that the U.S. will run Venezuela until there's a proper transition. With more on what happens next in Venezuela, let's bring in foreign policy expert Michael Berg. He's the senior non-resident fellow at the Center for International Policy. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Let's start with that point there about what you make of President Trump saying the U.S. will run the country temporarily without any real timeline. What are some of the biggest challenges going forward?
Well, the main challenge is to secure some kind of democratic transition with the backing of regime officials who are not that committed to democracy. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to take out Maduro and leave behind Delcy Rodríguez, Diosdado Cabello, Vladimir Padrino, all of these figures who were part of the Maduro regime, unless you assume that Trump really did believe the talking points that he was given, that Maduro was personally directing a major drug trafficking organization, and therefore all of the ills of the Venezuelan government fell on him. But drugs were always a very flimsy pretext for military action. Certainly, if President Trump cared about narco dictators, well, he just pardoned one a few weeks ago.
So, whoa, hold on a minute. The expert just dropped a truth bomb that exposes a classic political maneuver, convenient outrage, to claim that drugs are the primary motivation for intervention in Venezuela, only to then turn around and pardon a convicted narco dictator from Honduras just weeks prior. That's not just a flimsy pretext. That's a transparent excuse, folks. It's like saying you're on a diet, but then you're caught sneaking a whole cake when no one's looking. It completely undermines any moral high ground. If the fight against drug trafficking is truly a core principle, it needs to be applied consistently, not selectively. This kind of hypocrisy doesn't just erode trust in international policy. It makes you wonder what the real agenda is. Because when your stated reason for action is so easily contradicted by your own past behavior, people are naturally going to look for the hidden motives. It's not about drugs, it's about something else entirely, and the expert just called it out beautifully.
Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, was caught on tape saying he was going to stuff the cocaine right up the noses of the gringos, were his words, and was convicted and sentenced in the U.S. and president let him out of prison. So I don't think it was ever really about drugs. And if it was about oil, which is a much more plausible scenario, former President Maduro, offered to make the U.S. the sole importer of Venezuelan oil instead of China, and this offer was rejected. So it's hard to see what exactly the U.S. President Trump would hope to get a better deal out of either the opposition or the Delcy Rodríguez government.
So President Trump also said in that presser yesterday that Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado doesn't have the respect of the country to be able to govern, but it was actually her opposition and another candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, who many argue won the previous presidential election in a landslide. What do the people of Venezuela think about President Trump's characterization and perhaps who they could see transitioning to that position of power going forward?
Well, I can't speak for the people of Venezuela, but according to the results of last year's election, which were stolen by Maduro, Edmundo Gonzalez, the opposition leader, did win by a landslide, and he would be the rightful president. However, President Trump has backed a former regime official.
Okay, this is where it gets really murky and frankly pretty frustrating if you're someone who believes in democratic principles. The expert just laid it out. The opposition leader, Edmundo Gonzalez, won the last election by a landslide, which was then stolen. That's a clear, legitimate democratic mandate, right? But then President Trump decides to back Delcy Rodríguez, a former regime official. It's like saying you're going to help a struggling local business, but then you invest in their biggest competitor instead. How can you claim to be promoting democracy and a proper transition while simultaneously throwing the legitimate democratically elected opposition under the bus, as the expert put it? This isn't just a misstep. It's a baffling contradiction that leaves you scratching your head. If the goal is truly a democratic Venezuela, you support the Democrats, not the remnants of the regime you're supposedly trying to replace. It makes you question the sincerity of the entire endeavor.
The former vice president and now interim president, Delcy Rodríguez. And so effectively, he has thrown the Venezuelan opposition, headed by Nobel laureate Maria Corina Machado, under the bus by disparaging her.
But forgive me,
so
I guess my question, just to clarify, is because he did, in your words, throw her under the bus, do you think, though, she and the opposition do have enough support to be able to run the country if they were elevated into a position of power?
Well, no, because the real power brokers in Venezuela are the Venezuelan military, and the military is very much entrenched in all of the profitable areas of the economy.
And there it is, the cold, hard truth of realpolitik. The expert just cut through all the political rhetoric and got straight to the heart of the matter. The Venezuelan military holds all the cards. It's not about elections or popular support when the military is deeply entrenched in every profitable sector, legal and illegal. They're essentially running a massive corrupt enterprise, and they have no incentive to give that up for some idealistic notion of democracy. This is the harsh reality that often gets overlooked in the grand pronouncements of international policy. You can talk about transitions and democratic ideals all you want, but if you don't address the raw power and financial interests of the military, you're just whistling in the wind. It highlights the immense challenge of any intervention. You're not just fighting a government, you're fighting a deeply embedded, self-serving power structure that benefits immensely from the status quo. It's a stark reminder that even with the best intentions, some situations are just incredibly painfully complicated.
Both legal and illegal. And they would have to be offered a better deal by the opposition than what they currently get under the Chavista government. And for them to be forced to accept an opposition leadership without the retaining the oil rents that they currently get would require something like a full-on U.S. military occupation, something that President Trump presumably does not want. And so he did make a calculated decision, but this is one that does not really favor a transition to democracy, at least anytime in the near future.
And he did not rule out more American boots on the ground in Venezuela either.
And there it is, the cold, hard truth of realpolitik. The expert just cut through all the political rhetoric and got straight to the heart of the matter. The Venezuelan military holds all the cards. It's not about elections or popular support when the military is deeply entrenched in every profitable sector, legal and illegal. They're essentially running a massive corrupt enterprise, and they have no incentive to give that up for some idealistic notion of democracy. This is the harsh reality that often gets overlooked in the grand pronouncements of international policy. You can talk about transitions and democratic ideals all you want, but if you don't address the raw power and financial interests of the military, you're just whistling in the wind. It highlights the immense challenge of any intervention. You're not just fighting a government, you're fighting a deeply embedded, self-serving power structure that benefits immensely from the status quo. It's a stark reminder that even with the best intentions, some situations are just incredibly painfully complicated.